Hello, everyone. This is Giulio Coraggio. I'm the location head of the Italian Intellectual Property and Technology Department here at the law firm DLA Piper. This is the podcast Diritto al Digitale, and I'm glad to have here as a guest Aldo Lamberti, founder and CEO of Syntheticus. We're going to talk in English because the topic has so much global interest, but obviously we're both Italian. Aldo, welcome here.
Thank you very much, Giulio. Thanks for having me. Delighted to be here and to talk about this, very interesting topic indeed.
Yeah, I mean, the name of your company is Syntheticus, so I believe that you deal with synthetic data. We've been talking about synthetic data a lot during the last months with the growth of generative AI. But can you set the picture what synthetic data are and how they can be exploited and by whom?
Sure. Yeah. Yes. Obviously, the hype came with generative AI, and in that sense, with large language models, and notably with ChatGPT, which is like the first application of GPT, this generative pre-trained transformers. So yeah, synthetic data in a sense is artificially generated data. So it mimics the real world data in a sense. So this is the definition that we go with. And in a sense, it all started with or it also started with generative adversarial networks, which is a neural network from the machine and deep learning world that has been invented by the guys at Facebook or Meta nowadays, because they were creating a lot of synthetic images at that time. So it had started with images. And since then, so that was 7 or 8 years ago, I guess. Since then, it has really evolved into all other fields of data, not only images, but then also videos. You probably remember also these deep fakes and deep fake videos a couple of years ago. So that came all along with that. And now we're seeing that synthetic data as such is moving also into other data structures. For example, structured data or text or other type of data. So it really evolved from that into other stuff.
So from what I see, the usage of synthetic data is twofold. On the one hand, I want to use the synthetic data because it's AI generated. So I put a prompt in ChatGPT, and rather than writing an article, ChatGPT is gonna write the article for me, or at least at first draft, and it's gonna give me answers. On the other hand, synthetic data is also used for machine learning purposes, because AI needs to be trained, and if I use real data, let's say, there is a new field of copyright issues that might arise, but we can talk about it later on. I mean, where do you see at the moment the biggest hype on synthetic data? What your company is doing, and from your point of view, what are the perspectives?
Yeah, well, obviously the biggest hype is with a natural language, with text, what we see so far, because it has like a more intrinsic value, and obviously it's more near to the people. It's more tangible, sort of. When you use ChatGPT, it's also for everyday operations, right? As you were saying, you put in a prompt, and then through GPT, so this large language model has been trained on almost the whole World Wide Web. So it can help you, and it can give you back some answers. However, as that's one of the use cases, right? However, there's also other use cases out there in the world, And that's notably when for companies, for public, but also private organizations where they already have data, and they would like to run, as you said, machine learning on it or do advanced analytics on it. But the problems there are privacy related. In a sense, it goes also like a little bit into this copyright IP things that you said. So there, what we do is that based on the real world data that the organizations deal with, but are too sensitive to deal with because of GDPR and other stuff, we help them in creating a synthetic version of it, which is still usable. You can still run machine learning on it or do whatever you want. However, it is at the same time compliant with regulations, and so copes with this privacy challenges. So those are other very interesting use cases.
Yeah, indeed, because if I'm using, for instance, real images, there will be images of real individuals, and there will be potential privacy issues. If I'm using real images, there might be copyright issues, and then there is a new discussion how the EU copyright tax and data mining exemption might exempt properly the applicability of copyright laws to contents generated through this kind of technology. So basically, the synthetic data is not a kind of bad copy of the real data, but is generated from the machine. Maybe Aldo, the missing point here is from someone is that it's not the generative AI is taking bits and bytes from what is in their background, but is actually generating. So ChatGPT is not just copying pieces of text from the web and pasting them in the answer that is provided to us. Is that right?
Exactly. Well, even there are very different neural networks, but they're all in the obviously in the category of deep learning and machine learning. Pardon me. So there are various approaches. So there are generative adversarial networks that really generate out of noise new artificial data points, but while maintaining the statistical properties of the real world data. Like really, they have access to the real world data and they try to mimic that as good as possible. And so that's like a big game between wanting to generate and copying the real world data and trying to understand when this copy really is almost undistinguishable from the real world data. So that's one realm, and the other realm is more like what ChatGPT is doing, and also others is really predicting the next best word in a sentence, right? Because it has been trained on the whole World Wide Web, it somehow can predict very, very good what the next word should be. And like that, ChatGPT can build sentences, paragraphs, whole blocks, and as we've seen, it can also write whole works and dissertations even. So I've already seen very, very, very interesting approaches to that.
Sorry, I think the key word to understand generative AI is predicting, as you said, because basically from what I understand, but you are the expert here, the machine is not copying the text that it has in its deep learning, but it's predicting based on what it learned what the next word will be on according to what the prompt given to the machine is about, right?
Exactly, yeah. So it has been massively trained, and that's why these models are so big and have so many parameters and the weights, because it really has been trained on literally everything and also code. So that's like the groundbreaking thing of GPT-3, GPT-3.5 was that the guys at OpenAI trained their algorithms on code stuff from software development. So that was like the groundbreaking thing and the leap forward. And so actually they predict the next best thing and they go along. So yeah, in a sense, that's the thing. But then the other thing with another neural network is more out of nothing, sort of out of noise, to create a data point and then to see if that data point makes sense. Obviously, with that approach at the beginning, this generated data point makes no sense at all because it's just out of noise, like almost random, sort of. But then the game goes on and it becomes better and becomes better, and then all of a sudden this generated data point, whether it's an entry in an Excel spreadsheet or whether it's an image, almost is indistinguishable from the real world data. So very interesting approaches.
Yeah, I mean, you run a company specialized in the field of synthetic data. What are the areas of business where you at the moment see the biggest hype on usages on the one end and on demand of usage on the other end? Because you mentioned at the beginning of Facebook, so there is a kind of maybe misunderstanding that unless you are a designer or marketing agency, there isn't much you can do with synthetic data. But maybe I'm wrong. I believe that potentials are much broader.
Sure. No, the potential is huge, and it literally just started to evolve around it. So the fields that we are in, being a Swiss company out of Switzerland, is in the financial service industries and in insurance. And within there, the challenges are obviously different, but the spike around data access, so around those challenges. And the use cases that we are notably in it is around software testing. So what does that mean? It means that when internally a company wants to develop a product and wants to launch it really to their end customers, they need to test it before that, right? And they need to do like a lot of testing to make sure that the application works when they then launch to the end customers. So the thing is that the software testers sit there and need to do the software testing, but in most cases they don't get any data because the data owner of the company doesn't approve the request because there is GDPR and other regulations, right? And so that's a problem. Or another thing is that they actually get access to production data, very sensitive data containing personally identifiable information, and so they really expose all those people to this, to real data, which is also a huge challenge. And so we step in and work together with the organizations. We synthesize first this very sensitive data, very toxic. We make them available a synthetic sandbox and synthetic environment with synthetic data, so that they can use that for their software testing while staying complying and maintaining this really fundamental human right of privacy.
Yeah, I mean, your point is really relevant. We've seen during the last years that unfortunately companies had to use real data to train their systems because their answer was, if I don't use real data, I cannot actually test the proper usage. And then as lawyers, we're trying to find a legal basis justifying the usage of real data, and it might be the legitimate interest because you want to provide a better service, but it was always a bit stretched. With synthetic data, you're not actually using real data. And for instance, some of the uses, the fields where we use the synthetic data is to test the machine that is identifying frauds or is testing for insurance companies, the level of risk. All this was happening with real data so far, and now there is a new field, and synthetic data might be even more accurate in some cases. There was also some negative publicity about generative AI, but I think that is, I don't know your view, but that is normal when a new technology comes into place. And I see so many potentials for this field to grow. Do you think it's time to regulate, or, I mean, my view is that the market is going to regulate, and there are already in place some general principles. So let's unleash AI and see how market players are gonna find the right fit. I don't know if you concur.
Yes, I mean that's a very good overview about the whole market, because it is new. Yes, and obviously it takes time. The first mover advantages are obviously very strong. However, for the second layers after then, the questions are, how does it look like, the legal aspect, right? What do the authorities say about synthetic data? So we're in constant exchange with not only Brussels, with the European Data Protection Supervisor, which is like the highest enforcement and real enforcement, all the bodies on that, and the EDPS, very interesting, is calling synthetic data a technical solution to a legal problem, and the way to go forward, right? So they already published very interesting pieces. They're doing their own research. So they are already giving sort of a green light for synthetic data. However, it's not written down in the law. So there, the European Data Protection Board and obviously the nation countries need to maybe go more in depth in defining maybe a law. But it's very hard because regulators tend to be tech neutral, technology neutral. So we will see how it evolves. We have been here in London last 2 weeks, and we also were in exchange with the Financial Conduct Authority, which is the regulator for the financial ecosystem here in the UK. And they're also very active and innovative in pushing synthetic data as a way to go forward. Not the way, so we really need to emphasize, it's not the way to go forward, but it's a way to go forward, right? And we'll see how it evolves. It's a constant exchange with the legislator and the regulator. But for now, it seems that there's a green light for it, and so that's going to unleash even more use case and potentials.
Yeah, there is a famous quote from Andrew Ng, and he says that AI is the new electricity, in the sense that it's gonna be used in any possible field. I do believe it's like that. It's gonna happen, for instance, even for legal services. We are using AI in our day-to-day activities, and I don't agree. We're just at the beginning, because if we're talking about generative AI, I think in October of last year, maybe we wouldn't be here, because there wasn't much. I mean, absolutely. So Aldo, thank you for your time. It was a very interesting chat, and I'm sure we're gonna have opportunities to exchange views in the coming months and years. Thank you.